Hello and welcome to another episode of the ICC Academy Livecast, a new podcast series where we take a deeper dive into global business trends and ideas. I'm your host Thomas Paris, and in this episode, we will discuss the latest trends in online learning and how technology is transforming the education landscape. Our special guest today is Federica Peloso, our very own Director of Technology, recently shortlisted for the 2019 Women in IT Awards in Asia. So thank you for joining us, Federica. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Thomas. Thank you for asking me to be here.
So you and I have been working together for 3 years now, but let's properly introduce you to the audience. So tell us a little bit about your background, what your passion in the online education space is, and as well as what you do within your role of Director of Technology.
Okay, this is actually very interesting. As you know, I'm Director of Technology at the ICC Academy, so I take care of all the technology here at the Academy, and I take care of the delivery of our online courses on our different platforms and systems. I actually have a different background because I'm originally a linguist. But then about 10 years ago, I took an interest in teaching and in learning and then in online learning. So here I am.
Nice. So you sort of migrated to the online space.
That's right. This was about, as I said, about 10 years ago. And I remember back home in Italy, this was just starting. And my university had a very rudimental learning management system. And I was very fascinated because I thought, okay, so we can actually maybe avoid spending so much time sitting in our classroom and, do some stuff at home. And that will cut costs and will cut times. And I found it really interesting. So I thought, okay, why not? Let's explore it.
Right. And you have an interesting perspective as well, because when you joined the ICC Academy, initially it was in the production.
That's right.
And now you actually find yourself on the other side of that because you've taken a look at how, what goes into building online courses. But now you're actually taking online courses as well. So you can sort of see both sides, best of both worlds in that way.
That's right, yes. And I have to say, production is still my first love. I love the whole experience of actually producing a course and talking to an expert and really understanding how they work. And then you take everything and you have to find the best way to put it together. But then at the same time, technology changes so fast that it's so fascinating to see how you can actually put that out in the best way for everyone to see. So it becomes like production is a very individual experience. And then with technology, you can tell people, okay, this is what we do. And this is the best way we have to deliver it. Mm-hmm.
Based on what you've seen with the ICC Academy, but also with the courses that you're taking and all the research that you've been doing in your current role, what is it that you would qualify as maybe the top 3 or maybe the top 1 advantage of online learning over the traditional education? Because you and I were both raised on traditional education. I mean, that's our legacy is we've gone through the brick and mortar university system with the physical books and the homework and everything. So what is it that you think is an added value of taking classes online?
I think the best thing about online learning is that it gives equal opportunities and the same advantage to everyone because it's cheap. So it requires a very low effort in terms of money and even a relatively small effort in terms of time. And it doesn't matter if you're a man, a woman, if you're poor, if you're rich, if you're from one country, from another country, or even your previous background. It gives equal opportunities to everyone. So I think that's the the best thing about it. And then, of course, as we said, it's cheap. So that's the main advantage. And it's flexible. It's on the go. So you can pretty much take your courses and keep learning, whether you're on a plane with your offline courses, or you're on the metro in the morning, or on your lunch break at work. So we're all very busy, but then this gives us time and space to keep learning. So I think that's the best thing about it.
Right. No, and the fact that I think you touched on it a little bit, but one thing that I've noticed as well, especially on the ICC side, is it's the only real way of reaching that many people.
Yes.
Right. There's only so many experts in the world, and there's so many people that could benefit from the expertise, and you just can't hold physical classrooms, in this day and age, not in the demographics that we're working on the scale we're working on. I think online is the only way to sort of bridge the gap.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, if you're from a maybe poorer or different background, and you go to some university and you don't have a huge access to, high level expertise, that could be a problem, because it doesn't really build on your background. You don't have a way to improve on that. But if you have access to expertise worldwide, it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter who you are, you can still access the best that is there. For example, the MIT courses that are becoming so popular, and all the online courses that are taught by the best and the leading experts in every single subject. So that's a very good thing.
Yeah, it's a cognitive collection of expertise.
Yeah.
Right. It's tapping into that is very valuable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the genesis of the internet as well, as it's pros and cons, but at least everyone's connected.
Exactly. Yeah.
What would you say are some of the challenges that online learning is facing today, and maybe some of the challenges that it's going to be facing in the long run, in terms of what are certain things that online education can't do? Yeah,
so, okay, there are a few challenges. First of all, for example, I will say perception. Of course, you can access experts and high-level education, but at the same time, there's still some kind of a perception that if you are studying online, it's not, as good as a real course in a real university. I have to say this is shifting a little bit. This is changing, luckily. I can see that employers are changing their mind about it, which is really, really important. But perception is definitely one of the issues. Another thing I will say, of course, is tech limitations. Unfortunately, not everyone has the same level of access to, the same devices or internet connection, even though there are softwares and platforms nowadays that allow you to actually attend an online course with a very low required bandwidth. So that's also a relatively important challenge. And then I will say something that is really, paradoxically, is really close to me is self-discipline. Many people need the teacher there saying, okay, this is week 1, you have to do this. These are your homeworks, and this is your lesson, and this is the book you have to study. But especially adults might have a challenge with it. And I have to say that's something I struggle with sometimes myself in my online studies, because not everyone is at self-discipline. But it's actually something that teach you responsibility as well. So it's a challenge, but if you are able to overcome the challenge, it's also very rewarding, because you finish a course and no one was there forcing you to finish. You're finishing it because you want to, and you did it on your own. And then, of course, there are the technical issues and challenges, which we see obviously in our work.
We certainly do.
We certainly do. Sometimes it's our fault, sometimes it's the user's fault. It doesn't really matter. It's just what matters is that technology comes with frustration. So we need to keep that in mind, and that's why we try to make the journey as smooth as possible, because I do know what it means to try to do something and be very frustrated with it because it doesn't work.
Right. I mean, I think you're hitting the nail on the head for that one. One of the other advantages that just came to mind when you were talking about this is a way of immortalizing knowledge as well. As there's some topics that the experts are a dying breed because it's more lucrative to become something else than a teacher nowadays. Right. So the fact that you would be able to tap into an expert and then maybe 20 years from now, the person could still learn from that person.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's very important because, we can, take a look at the way that movies were made, 20 years ago is not the same as the way movies are made now, right? If you had a way of having a crystal ball and going back in time and having that teacher, either on video or otherwise, just explaining how things were done, even just purely to learn from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And appreciate how far things have come. I think that's definitely something.
Yeah, it's like a huge archive of knowledge that stays there throughout the years. And actually, you know what? Actually, even we see that in online learning and in general in instructional design. Sometimes the models that we use in instructional design are actually models that were created 20 years ago for completely different scopes and objectives, but we still use them today. So it's the same for online learning. Right. So yeah, old knowledge can still become actual knowledge and active knowledge even after 5 years or 10 years. And if we can record that in a video, in an online course, in an online chat, then we have it forever.
Right, and having it easily accessible as well, because you would have textbooks on certain subjects that have been around for a long time, but those are physical things.
Yeah, and they don't change. They don't adapt. Yes. Online learning adapts.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think pros and cons for both, but I think getting that perspective is useful. One question I have is: are there certain industries or certain groups that online learning just could not work for?
There are some groups where probably online learning is not the best bet yet. Right. I would like to say, not yet. There are some skills that honestly cannot be taught online. Some soft skills cannot be taught, and sometimes online learning doesn't have that component of course, human interaction that you might want or need from a teacher. Think of someone that, for example, has some limitation or even some disability or something similar. Sometimes you do need a different approach, and online learning is not completely there yet. So online learning, I think it destroys the barriers, the physical barriers, but there's still some work to be done on the teachers and on who delivers the actual learning. Some things cannot be taught yet.
I think there's a certain magic as well of having a learning from someone and having the live interaction back and forth. So you can do a little bit of that on video or on audio, as we can see now. One that comes to mind is something that would that would require someone to be able to subtly understand where you're coming from, maybe able to motivate you in certain ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Very subjective topics or artistic topics are difficult to teach online.
Or abstract thinking.
Yeah. Exactly. But even that, I think you're right. I think even that's going away, and we'll touch on that in the trends later, because of the social component.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. Even if you don't necessarily have that one singular teacher that's helping you along, you'd be able to learn collectively through the people that are around you also, going through the same journey.
Yes, and that's very, very valuable, I think. And I really like that online learning is shaping that way, because somehow it's like something alive. It morphs and it shapes itself and it changes according to what people need. Mm-hmm. So, of course, there's a lack of human interaction, but then online learners somehow try to fill that gap in other ways. So we need to, we need to start thinking that people, even in online learning, need that interaction, and we need to be able to give them what they need.
Right. And over the last few years, which industries rather, have really exploded in terms of online learning?
I think actually in the last maybe 7 to 8 years, I've seen it growing like crazy in internal training in big corporates. And then that's actually starting also in smaller businesses. So, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, we had all those forms and human resources forms to fill and safety training to do, health and safety and so on. And that's changing completely. And 10 years ago, you had to learn from someone teaching you how to do sales, and then now you have an online course, and things get updated, so you always have the latest knowledge. So I think internal training is growing a lot. At the same time, we're seeing like an explosion of big, massive courses with hundreds, if not thousands of learners. Universities are much more in the field than 10 years ago. The biggest universities now, pretty much everywhere in the biggest universities have blended courses, blended programs, and because they're realizing they benefit from it, the students benefit from it. So I think the two words that are benefiting the most are companies and universities and higher education in general.
Right.
In the last few years, especially in Australia, I saw this growing incredibly in primary school as well. I remember 5 years ago in Australia, we launched the first completely online program for kids that were as young as 6 years old, and it was very exciting to see them like talking to a screen, to a teacher who was somewhere else, and playing online games with kids in another classroom, in another school. There's still a long way to go, of course, and we need to be careful because the way we teach kids is not the same way we teach adults, obviously,
right.
But I actually see that rising in primary schools and primary education as well, at least in Australia, which is my latest experience.
Right. It's interesting because it really is a chicken and the egg scenario when it comes to the way that the tech has fundamentally changed the way that we learn and vice versa, right? If you take a look at how kids are being essentially babysat now, it's in front of an iPad in most cases,
yes.
right? Or in front of a phone, and they've learned that, or rather they grew up learning that way, right? Through YouTube, through anything. If they need to know something, they would just go online. So one way or another, they'll end up online. And I think that sort of also shaped the way that universities are taking a look at it, because those kids grow up.
Yes.
Right? And those kids grow into being their students, and they become comfortable learning that way. So it's interesting to see, okay, well, is it the technology that sort of spurred that way of learning, or is it just the way that we were going, the technology is catching up?
Yeah, it's actually a very good point. I think the two things actually influence themselves. One influences the other and vice versa. Technology is adapting, but content is adapting as well. And it's obvious it's gonna be like that. Of course, like I'm very conflicted because of course I don't like to see a child parked in front of an iPad, and my first reaction will be like, that's not right. But then we really can't fight it. Mm-hmm. It's like we can't stop it, and we shouldn't.
Right.
We shouldn't. We should actually give them the freedom to find out and discover and actually use those devices, not as a time filler, but as an actual support, as an help.
Absolutely. I completely agree, because also you can't have them falling behind, right? You can't take, technology moves way too quickly now, where you take them out of that ecosystem for even 3 years,
yes.
right? They're not going to be able to be at the same level, right? Take a look at the way that we were learning things before, right? And we can go into that a little bit later as well, but the way that we were learning things before, we were learning to type. Now kids just know how to type. We had classes to learn how to type, yes. where we would spend, 1 or 2 hours a week learning how to do this. Now those classes have completely gone away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's detrimental to try to stop it. I mean, why should we? We just need to be careful, of course. It needs to be like a good balance. It needs to be used. Technology must be used, but it must be used for the right reason, right. Not just as a time filler or to spend some free time. It needs to support learning. Mm.
So, I mean, we were talking about iPads and smartphones, and Apple's getting a lot of free publicity today. But in terms of looking ahead, right, in the trends that we're seeing now that will probably bear fruit over the next few years, What do you think are going to be the biggest disruptors that you see in the horizon when it comes to online learning specifically?
In online learning specifically, I will say something that it's already growing and will keep growing in the next few years are definitely a few what we call methodologies on which we base our content and our delivery. So things will become more and more adaptive. The industry will make sure that courses and content will adapt according to the student's need, because that's absolutely necessary, of course, otherwise you just lose everyone's attention right away. Something really big will become user content, user-generated content, just because people want to learn, and at the same time it's very human to want to learn and then put that out there saying, hey, I learned this and you might find this useful. We'll see an increase in social learning, of course, and if you think about it, again, that's our human brain. We need other people. Some of us need people more, some other less, but in the end we all need people. So especially if we're not sitting in a bricks and mortar university, our brain brings us to actually find that same connection, and that results in chat box and communities and forums. And then if you let students do it, then at some point you will see they will start exchanging numbers and meeting in person, because that's what humans do. They look out for other humans pretty much.
Well, absolutely, and that's where the new generation is absolutely going as well.
Yes.
Right. I mean, if you take a look at the way generations, even our generation, socializes, right?
Yes.
We're very comfortable with even holding a relationship with people for years, socially, purely online.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So like there isn't, that's not some foreign concept nowadays.
Yeah, it's absolutely normal. Yeah. That's what you do. Most of the times now, you start a relationship with someone, like a friendship or just a connection with someone online, and then that becomes real in life. And that's the same you do with learning. You do it sitting in front of your computer, and then it becomes real somehow. And I think another important trend that we're seeing more and more is micro-learning. So, we were used to long courses, like 4, 5, 6 hour courses, which were just the translation of those endless PowerPoint presentations that you had to go through at university. So those endless presentations became very, very long courses, and now those are becoming shorter courses, micro-sized courses, and that, first of all, is the only way to catch someone's attention.
Headlines.
Exactly. Like maybe I lost your attention 40 seconds ago, but yeah, that's how it works. Like when you work on content, you know that perfectly. First 40 seconds, I have to catch your attention, otherwise you're gone. And then if you think about it, you go on Facebook, you go on Twitter, even you go in your WhatsApp chats, all you see is really small content that catches your attention. It's bite-sized. There's like little bits of knowledge that get exchanged. And that's how we're shaping reality in social media. And that's only normal. That is the best way to teach something to other people.
No, that's definitely a way of adapting. Absolutely. I mean, you take a look at science nowadays. It's purely on the headlines, and that's what gets shared, right? We found this on Mars. We found this like that. As long as you have a sexy headline, that'll go viral, right? Whereas like nobody's actually going to read the 50-page report.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I completely understand that point. You need to be able to hook them with something, and then that gets shared, and then it becomes just common knowledge. And then unfortunately, people generally only remember the headline.
Yeah.
So that's something from an instructional design point of view, we have to sort of lure them in with interesting content, because that's what we're fighting against. We're fighting against, okay, this is what this lesson is going to be about. How much time or emotional investment right off the bat, right? If I know that this lesson is going to be on something that I have no passion in, even just on the headline itself, the name, the description, whatever it is, or even on the course itself, then you're never even going to make the jump into the content. You're never actually going to absorb it properly. So we on our side, we also have to be very mindful of that. You need to draw them in and sort of find a way to hook them without showering them with too much information, because that's how you lose them.
Yes, and also you need to be able to tell them, this is what you're going to learn, and this is how you're going to learn it, and this is how you're going to use it in real life. Because I won't give anyone my precious 20 minutes of time unless that's useful to me somehow. So we're also seeing a shift in online learning towards real life scenarios and case studies more and more. And that's what people ask us more often, actually. People want to learn, but then, that's not enough. They need to apply. They want to apply it. So that's how online learning is shifting.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that's almost a way of turning them into the teacher. Right, by having a case study, like, okay, now as we'll say, okay, an exporter and importer do this, right? So what would you do in this case, right? So then you become the decision maker. You're not just a passive listener. You're not just a passive learner. We put you in the driver's seat, and I think that's really where you have the capacity to drive what it is that you want to learn, and also finding a way to apply it directly.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and in terms of applying, I think, of course, if we're talking about trends. AI and VR, so artificial intelligence and virtual reality, they're already big somehow, not as much in online learning as they will be in the next probably 10 to 20 years, but that will be the real challenge, because that's what we will use to apply. Think about like mechanics, engineering, even medicine. People are gonna learn like that. With virtual reality, they're gonna learn, instead of in a classroom, they're gonna learn probably in front of a computer with some virtual reality device, and that's how they will learn. I don't think that for the next few years virtual reality and or artificial intelligence will replace teachers and trainers. We're not there yet, and we won't be there for quite some times. We're on the good path for it, but not yet.
It's interesting you mentioned AI, actually, because I don't think that AI is really going to... I agree with you, first of all, that I don't think it's going to be a major player on the education side. However, I feel like it's going to be a catalyst to push online education more in the forefront. And the reason I say that is because you're going to have AI taking over jobs.
Yeah.
So just, as a byproduct of that trend, which is inevitable and is going to be, to potentially cause a manpower crisis in certain countries, online education will be there to sort of bridge the gap and retrain people into different jobs. Yes. Whereas, we're going to be at capacity for physical education and actual campuses. Yes. Then the online is going to come in the spotlight and say, okay, you need to transfer from, let's say a retail job into something that is more on coding. Well, you can learn coding online.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I think we are done with the time of, learning how to studying for something, learning how to do something. That's what you do for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and that's it. Skills transfer is as important as ever. Mm-hmm. And online learning gives us the opportunity to do it. Coding, learning, artificial intelligence, learning how to use machines, pretty much everything. Mm-hmm. Philosophy, history, it's all in there.
Right. So if we take everything we discussed, so in terms of the trends, the technology, the way that it's influencing the way that we learn, where are we going, in your opinion? It doesn't have to be realistic. It could be an idealistic way of where we should be going, perhaps. But what is the natural conclusion of the trajectory we're on right now?
It's hard to say, of course. As I said, we'll keep going towards being more and more social and to be the ones who actually create the content. So we'll become more and more active rather than passive. So instead of being passive learners, we will be active learners. We will produce content, and we'll just leave it at disposals for everyone else's disposal. At the same time, what I hope, and this is my personal hope, is that this becomes even more widespread even in third world countries, developing countries. I really hope that governments and associations and organizations find a way to encourage this everywhere, whether that be with better infrastructure or just, advertising it more, giving out scholarships, just giving everyone the opportunity to do this. That's where I personally hope it's going. That's where it should go.
Right. I would like that as well. That would be a nice direction for everyone to go in. I think even just moving past the limitations we have with bandwidth, data caps, and access to hardware like the phones. I think even getting past that hump, getting people connected online is already a form of online education. Right?
Yes.
They would already be able to answer many of the questions, even if it is to go on YouTube like we are right now, to be able to learn what it is that, I certainly do it. So I think even just getting people online would be a huge step forward, at least in making sure that we all have a common denominator.
Yes. And anything that is exchange is actually learning. Mm-hmm. When you're exchanging an opinion, a view, even when you're fighting or arguing with someone, you're still learning something. So we gotta take more and more people on board everywhere.
Right.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if it's if they have a good infrastructure and they can, do synchronous learning and do very fancy online classrooms and things like that, or if they can only do asynchronous learning, meaning that they get the final product and they see offline, that's still good. That's still the way to go. Mm-hmm. We need to just spread the knowledge and let everyone in.
Do you have a message that you maybe want to get across to sort of wrap everything up with a nice bow?
Yes, I do. To all the people out there who saw an online course, maybe in something they're interested in, or something they never studied before, or something that is actually their own field, whatever, just try it. Even the person who's I know so many people who say, no, it's useless. No, it's a waste of time. Please just try it. And then after that, you will be able to say, yeah, okay, it's not for me. I'd rather go to a real university, but please try it because it might change completely the way you learn and the way you live. It might have a positive impact that you don't even expect.
And if you need a place to start, www.icc.academy, free demos and new courses.
Of course.
So we do have to start wrapping up. Thank you so much for doing this. I know we've been talking about it for a while. I hope we can do it again.
Yes, of course.
So it's always a pleasure to chat. And as a reminder, we are hosting these live broadcasts every month. So sign up to our website for free and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the ICC Livecast. See you next time.